What's up everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is going to be a pretty exciting episode. We're going to be reviewing a product called Dehancer, which is a film emulating plugin that works with some of the largest editing softwares around. When they reached out, I said yes, and they were able to lend me a license to experiment and, more importantly, check out their product. Now, just because they lended me a license doesn't mean that I'm gonna hold back. I'm gonna be very honest about how I felt about my experience, and we're gonna really jump in to what this product can do to your footage. So we're gonna do a pretty in-depth review for me using this product the last month. And in this video, we're gonna be talking about what Dehancer does, how it works, how it can impact your footage, pros and cons, who this is for, and then we're also going to be taking it a step further and having a little bit of fun and comparing Dehancer with DaVinci Resolve's brand new film look that has been included in the studio version that can also emulate film as well. So with that being said, let's jump right into this review and start breaking down what Dehancer is. So Dehancer is actually a plugin that works with DaVinci Resolve, which is the one that we're going to be talking with today, Final Cut, and also Premiere Pro. With it being a plugin, it makes it really easy for you to work within your editing software. There's not going to be any type of complicating exporting, taking it to a different software, having to bring it back. The fact that everything is in one area, it just boosts productivity, and it's also going to make things a lot easier when it comes to making adjustments, which I think is probably one of my favorite things about it. The program itself has a total of 60 different film emulations, and these can range from some that you may know, like Portra, Kodak, like for example, Portra 400, Portra 800, and even Kodak Ultra Max is in here as well, which is pretty interesting. My favorite thing about this program is that these are not just presets that go over your film. These are essentially tailored down to a science. The team that works at Dehancer is both enthusiasts and also scientists as well, which really allow the overall software to thrive. I think having that level of expertise in an overall plugin is important in just generating the best colors and also generating the best looks as well. Also to mention, Dehancer does have an app that you can use on your phone, which I think is absolutely insane. The fact that you can go out, shoot footage on your phone, and then open up that Dehancer app and be able to make the same amount of adjustments that you would on your desktop on your phone is just absolutely insane. You'll be able to really elevate yourself from others and push yourself to the next level when it comes down to your storytelling. But with that said, let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and let's talk about how this software can impact your overall footage and how it can overall enhance it as well. So let's jump right into that. So now we are in DaVinci Resolve. I'm gonna do a very quick color grade on how this works. I'm not gonna really go into too much detail on the node system and everything else, but I'm gonna do a quick overview. So if you are working in DaVinci Resolve, they do go on a node system, so you'll essentially have to create your own nodes depending on how you're editing your overall image or your footage. In my situation here, my first one's always going to be my color transform. The second one is going to be my white balance. The third one is going to be any basic color corrections. And then the fourth one is going to be where I'm going to add in Dehancer. According to their instructions, it's best that you add Dehancer to the last node that you have, and when you do so, it's going to change your image completely. Now this is something I'm going to go over in the cons section, but this is what it will look like when you add the overall plugin to your software or to your footage. So the first thing that I generally will do the moment I get in here is I will go straight down to the bottom here and I will disable all tools. That way I can go through the overall footage as a whole and then be able to essentially make adjustments as I'm going. So in this situation here, we're gonna go ahead and essentially color grade this footage with Dehancer, and you're gonna see the different things that this software has that I think is pretty cool. When you get on the top portion here, these are gonna be your basic controls. These are gonna be your exposure compensation, temperature compensation, tint compensation. You can defringe, do things like that. You could do these in a node, but you are able to do it within the plugin, which is pretty cool if you're trying to save time and if you're working quickly. These can work for you instead of working on a node. Generally, I work on a node, but here and there, I've been finding myself using some of these as well as I move through. So When you do disable all of the tools, very important that if you are going to be adding different things that you add, and you select the enable, so it adds the film grade or the film look to the actual footage. In this case here, I'm going to go ahead and utilize, I believe, the Kodak 200. I really like Kodak 200 because of the warmth that it provides, but you can see the variety of different types of films that are in here. Kodak Supra 100, you have, Kodak Vision 500, Kodak Vision 3500. You have CineStill up here as well if you do like to use CineStill. Pretty cool varieties of films that are in here, and some that you may have never even heard of that can probably amplify whatever emotion that you're trying to convey. So in this situation here, I'm just gonna go ahead and stick with the Kodak Gold 200. I love the warmth on this. And then down here, you're able to push and pull if you would like to do that. That's kind of like what you do if you're in the dark room. You can push your film, pull your film. So that's something that's there if you decide to do that. Next up, I'm gonna go ahead and close them up as I'm going through. Next up is the Film Developer. Film Developer allows you to increase, the contrast, gamma corrections if you're trying to do that, and it also gives you separation of colors. And then down here is the color boost. Color boost is really cool because the way that this works is that it works on the least areas that are not as colored, and then this will essentially enhance that in those specific areas. So pretty cool to have that, to be honest. If you're trying to get much more of your colors, you can easily utilize the color boost. On the bottom here, you do have something called film compression. Film compression is great because what it does is that it essentially kind of mutes your highlights a little bit. And this is something that you will generally see with film. Because film can really retain highlight information, blowing out highlights in film is generally a lot more challenging versus with digital, blowing out your highlights is incredibly easy. So enabling this allows you to dial down the highlights to give you a little bit more of information in there. Now, I do want to keep in mind, if you do clip your highlights beyond being able to pull information, the film compressor is not going to save you. Make sure that you're being very careful when you're out, not clipping your highlights, and making sure that you're using, different types of filters to keep your highlights under control so you don't blow them out, because this is not going to be able to save you. So just keep that in mind. You do have the ability to change things here as well as also doing different things like color density if you want to add that. I usually will add some color density in here as well. Sometimes, up to sometimes 60. Next up is your black point and white point. This right here allows you to essentially be able to pull black or pull your whites. Generally, I don't use this very often. I usually try to expose the best I can correctly, but if you are needing to do different things to bring out areas in your darkest points, you could easily do that with this option here. Next up is the print. This is where I think the program really beefs it up and takes it to the next level, because this allows you to get print simulations of what this would look like printed. So for example, you can utilize, Fujifilm's 3513 print film. And then here you also have Kodak 2383, which gives your overall footage just that film look. You get the contrastiness, the punchiness, these different things that happen within the actual print itself, and I think that's really cool. You can really enhance your overall appearance, and because it's completely customizable, the overall possibilities are pretty much endless as you're going through this. So I'm going to keep it at Kodak 2383 just because I really like the punchiness of this. I love the contrastiness that it has, and I love how the grass is just this really cool color here. Next up is color head. Color head is supposed to simulate the enlarger head, so essentially moving different colors. This is essentially going to be the same thing as working in a node here, and then essentially moving around temperatures and colors. This will allow you to add different things, like if you want to make things blue, if you want to make things more yellow, more blue, if you want to make things more magenta, more green, you can do that with messing around with these different settings that are here. You also have the ability to change the tones of your shadows if you want to make them cooler, if you want to make them warmer, and the same with your mid and highlight tones as well. So really cool the amount of customizations that you can have just by moving around these sliders. I generally don't mess around with this. I generally will keep this in a node, but if you want, you can easily go in and essentially mess around with this. Next up is a film grain. So you are able to add film grain from different types of film stocks that are out there. 8mm will be very grungy, and you can choose up to 500 to make it incredibly grungy if that's what you're looking for. Or you can add in 35mm film, there's 16mm film, and then there's the 65mm, which I believe is, I forget the name of this film. I think it's the IMAX film. I usually like the 65mm because it does give you a very nice, subtle grain that kind of brings your images to life. After that, you do have the ability to input halation. Halation is something that happens generally with film, and what this does is you can see the brighter points of the image start to glow. You have a bit of a red tint or a red glow that occurs. This happens with film. I believe it has to do with the layer that's within it. I forget the layer of it, but it essentially causes the film to kind of glow a bit. And then next up is the bloom aspect. Bloom is really cool because if you see the whitest parts of the image here, like my shoe, what bloom will do is kind of create this kind of glow around it. It's like that film glow. It softens the image and it gives you just a little bit more edge. It works well with skin tones as well, if that's something that you're looking into. But that does allow you to add a little bit more of that emotion to your footage. And you can add more, you can add less. You can add less, you can add more. Generally, I keep it very subtle at sometimes 30 or even 40, depending on what I'm going for. But generally, I don't try to overuse this too much. But that is there if you are interested in trying that out. Down here, you do have film damage. Film damage is pretty self-explanatory. What this does is add bits of either dust, hair, or different things to the film or lint, and it creates more of like as if it was going through like the film gate into like a projector, and you can see all of the little specks and dust and the grungy things that generally happen when you don't clean your film. So that allows you to add that in there. And you can also even add jitter as well to kind of make it act as if somebody was holding your camera if you were using it on a tripod. So it definitely will evoke like the emotion, the motion of somebody holding a camera. So that's there for you to check out as well. And then of course comes the film breath, which pretty much just means that as your footage is rolling, it's going to essentially your footage is going to be changing colors, slight color variations. It's going to emulate as if it's presenting or going through a projector, again, similar to the film damage. Gate Weave allows you to customize the look or the overall aspect of this specific film you're trying to go for, so that's always cool to have as well. Let's go ahead and close these out since we've already talked about these, just so we don't get confused. But you can see, closing all of the different things, how many customizations are in here. And that's obviously always a plus, because definitely the more customizations you have, the more likely better your stuff's gonna come out. So this is the vignetting, which self-explanatory. It just makes the edges of your film darker, and that's there if you want to select that. Overscan is probably one of my favorite things that this program has, and what this does is that it allows you to emulate as if this was going through the actual film and as if you were scanning it. So it's pretty cool if you're trying to maybe showcase something or do something within your actual footage. I think it's really cool that this is in here, because honestly, I do have different folders that I use that have these different masks that I use outside and have to essentially arrange the footage within. So to be able to do it within a plugin and it not being very taxing on the system is pretty good. Now that was a bit of a funny thing to say, because my system is running really slow right now, and I think it has to do with the fact that I'm screen sharing and all this stuff is going on in the background. So usually without the screen record, everything works really well, but right now things are a bit slower than normal. But with that being said, you do have different options in here to choose, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter. You could do widescreen, and you can also adjust, pretty much anything if you want it to be neat, sharp, round edges. You can also change the orientation of the film if you want it vertical, horizontal. So super cool to be able to do that within the program itself. And then as we go down, the last ones here are the monitor. So you're able to do false color on here as well. So you can see the areas of your images that are essentially clipped and either clipped or underexposed. Now down here you have the output, which you can adjust how much change you've made. Now, this is what the original image looked like, and this is what it looks like after. I may make some changes to the grass. You can, tone it down a bit. That way I can, make some changes here as well. And then the cooler thing on here is that if you do get the Pro Edition, you have access to the LUT generator. So for example, if you are someone that's working on a documentary, somebody that is doing something that requires you to be able to look in camera how the footage is, and you've already created something within the program, you can download the LUT, stick this into your cinema camera, and then you can literally see in real time what it would look like when you drag it back into your editing software, which I think is really cool. I think that's a pretty cool thing to note, especially if you're doing a lot of different types of work in that way. Like if you're doing commercial work, for example, if you're doing a documentary, maybe a short film or something, being able to know what your footage is gonna look like when you edit it is a pretty cool thing to note. And then lastly on the bottom here is just your different options. I usually keep it normal to fast. I don't mess around with this just because I don't want this to slow down my computer any more than it already is at this time. But this gives you a good idea on how the program works and the amount of customizations that you generally have. I'm going to show at the end, obviously, what I've been able to do with this, as well as show you part of the documentary that I'm currently doing. But this pretty much gives you an idea. With that said, I said in the beginning we're going to have some fun because a lot of people have been talking about how DaVinci Resolve is now starting to implement their own film looks and how companies like Dehancer may not be needed, which I don't think is going to be true at all based on what I noted. So let's take a look, and we're going to go ahead and reset this node here, and we're going to go ahead and check out DaVinci Resolve's film creator look. I think that's what it's called. Let me take a look here. I think it's under film emulation. Here it is. It's called the film look creator. So putting this onto my film right away, as you can see, or onto my footage, you can see it does similar things to Dehancer, just not as advanced. Just looking at the top here, you don't really have too many things to choose from. Default 35, cinematic, which just gives you the black bars, bleach bypass, nostalgic. Right off the bat, I'm not really seeing a lot of the customizations that I saw with Dehancer. So I can see right away that this is going to be a lot more challenging to use. And you're definitely going to have a much further starting point than you were if you were using a program like Dehancer, where you're already kind of in the midst of a really good edit and all you got to do is make some adjustments. From what I'm seeing here, it's definitely going to be very challenging to get to a film look from this specific aspect here, especially with what I'm noting here. I'm seeing the same exact things like the vignetting, which is pretty cool. That's something that we saw with Dehancer. Halation, which we know is already well known with DaVinci. Grain, and it looks like you can essentially customize your grain here, which is pretty cool as a whole. Gate weave, and then film gate. And let's see, so it does give you this here. I could see it's missing the sprocket holes though. I'm not seeing that the sprocket holes are included with this, but still cool that it's here. And then there's global blend, which I have no idea what this is. I think this just is kind of the how much you want to add to how strong you want the overall effect to look. So based on what I'm seeing here, I'm not seeing the same exact, or I'm not seeing the advanced features that Dehancer had. So I can definitely see Dehancer being a good aspect to your workflow as far as customizations. Now, if you need basic stuff, I can see the DaVinci Resolve working. But if you're really trying to elevate and really chase after an emotion, I can see Dehancer being a pretty cool program to have as a whole. because I've been hearing so much controversy about, oh, programs like this are gonna go away. Generally speaking, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. Not seeing any specific film looks at all, like no Kodak, no Fujifilm, nothing. It's just seems to be very generic, and these don't appear to be very science-based or very accurate from what I'm seeing. But still pretty cool that, you know, DaVinci Resolve tried to do this on their own. With that being said, let's jump back and talk a little bit more about some of the other things to note about the software. Now that we've gone over the software and you have an idea of how it works, let's start breaking down some of the pros and cons of this software. I think one of the biggest pros that I really liked was having everything in one place without having to jump around to different softwares. I think that really made the process a lot easier when it came down to editing. I really liked as well that with a few clicks, I was able to get the look that I wanted without starting from scratch. I think it's a huge productivity booster, and it also allowed me to show different emotions that I would have else not known how to do since I'm not an advanced color grader. And I love that with this software, I can easily change things to match the emotion that I'm going through in whatever type of story I'm telling. With the different types of film stocks, it makes it easier to really change the emotion of what I'm trying to portray. And then lastly is the ton of customizations, from bloom to the print look to the different things that you can add like overscan. It just really takes your overall editing to the next level. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the cons of this and what are things I didn't like. I think the first con when it came to using the software was when I would add Dehancer to my node, it would really alter the image excessively. And I can see this being a bit off-putting for people that may not color grade excessively. They may ask themselves, did I do something wrong? Why does it look like this? So I think it would be nice if it had a way for you to turn that off by default so it doesn't essentially change your footage completely. But I do see the overall aspect of why they would do that. If they didn't, then, you know, people would ask, well, what does this software do? But it would be nice if there was a way that, you know, when you added it onto your node, if there was a pop-up that would come and say, hey, would you like it to all come in now, or would you like this to just start from scratch where there's no edits made to it and you can go through the sliders yourself? Next up is the price. I completely see where the price point is for what it is. You're paying for a pretty high quality program. With that being said, scientists working behind the scenes, the research that goes into giving you all these different looks, where the price point is, I can see where it's at, but it could be intimidating if you have never used a software like this, and to essentially put the amount out like that, it could be a bit on the challenging side. It would be nice if they had a tier model where you can essentially be a content creator with, you know, under 100,000 views or something, and be able to pay a little less to be able to access this to increase your productivity or your creativity. And if they had like a studio version where it would be like the full price. But lucky for you, if you do go to Dehancer and you use the promo code below, Film with Eric, you will get 10% off of your final purchase, which can be very handy. And that also helps this channel grow. The other con that I noted with others was that it can slow your system down. I was running it with DaVinci Resolve, and my Mac desktop is very old. It's like from 2015, and when I first started in this creative realm that I'm in now, I used it for photo editing only. But using DaVinci Resolve and the software, I didn't really notice any slowdown, but I did note that others had complaints of it slowing their software down. I think that probably is going to be with Premiere Pro because of how intensive that program can be, because that makes my system crash completely every single time. But that is something to keep a note of as well. Now, who is this program for? Realistically speaking, I would set this program for someone who is in the intermediate stages of either editing or filmmaking, because you are going to have a little bit of skill to be able to navigate the different aspects of this software. This software is nowhere near a drag and drop and everything looks great. You do have to make modifications. So this means that you are going to have to understand your editing software of choice. Either if you're working DaVinci Resolve, understanding how nodes work, how white balance works, and how to make sure that things can be corrected or looked at so you get the correct color that you want. And this also goes when you're out in the world shooting with your camera. If you don't have the basic understandings of exposure and white balance and other basic fundamentals, when you bring your footage in, Dehancer is not going to magically make your stuff look good. You are going to have a little bit of understanding of how all of that works. So that would place this program at an intermediate level. Now, I'm not saying that if you're brand new that you're not going to be able to figure it out. Dehancer has a massive community behind them, and they have a lot of different tutorials that you can take within the actual software itself. So you're going to be in really good hands, but there is going to be that slight learning curve of having to understand everything at once, and that can be a little overwhelming unless you're really in it to win it, and you're going to be essentially just sitting there trying to understand everything at once. But for the most part, if you're in an intermediate level editing, this is going to be a fairly easy software for you to use. With that said, I do think that Dehancer is a fairly powerful tool that can really emulate film in a way that is very impactful to your footage, and it can really increase your overall storytelling, which I think is really great. And the fact that the team is continually working and updating, and also the fact that they have a science base behind it, makes it that much more of a powerful software that I would recommend to anyone that is trying to get the looks that were noted here in this video. I think that it's a good program if you're truly trying to get that film look. I would definitely encourage you to check it out. If you haven't checked out Dehancer, they do have a trial that you can run as well. And if you do like it, make sure that you do use the promo code FilmWithEric to get 10% off. And also within the actual website itself, they do have different levels that you can choose from. They have the Pro, the Light, and then you can also add in any of the other customizations that you would want to add to your overall footage. With that being said, I would like to thank Dehancer for reaching out and giving me the honor of trying their software. I'm actually pretty pleased with it, and will definitely be using it for the project that I'm working on now. And again, I would like to give a huge thanks to them for reaching out, and also a huge thanks for everyone else that has stuck around and watched this whole video. If you have made it to the end, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment below if you've used this software and what you liked, and I'll always reach out. So thanks everyone. I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everyone has a great day. See ya.